The last credit. The wind was sharp and cold. It cut through metal like knives. Snow covered the old colony, and most humans had already left this frozen planet. Only one human remained, a man named Cole. Cole was not rich. He was not a hero. He lived alone in a broken ship at the edge of the market square. Every day he fixed small machines for food. He kept to himself. He had only a few things: an old coat, a rusty heater, and one single credit. One last credit. That evening, Cole was walking back to his ship when he heard something strange. A soft sound, like whimpering. He turned his head and followed the sound. It came from behind an old cargo crate. There, huddled in the snow, was an alien woman. Her skin was pale blue, lips trembling. She held two small children tightly in her arms. They didn't cry, they were too weak to cry. The woman looked up at Cole. Her eyes were full of fear and something else. Shame. Cole froze. He had seen many beggars in his life, but something about this alien woman broke him inside. Her bones showed under her skin. Her clothes were torn. The children were wrapped in old sacks. No one else in the market square looked at her. They walked past. She was invisible to them. Cole reached into his pocket. His fingers touched the cold coin, his last credit. He had been saving it for new boots. He looked at his boots. They had holes, but they still worked. He looked at her again. Without a word, he turned and walked toward the nearest stall. The old merchant saw him and raised an eyebrow. "A blanket," Cole said. "The thickest one you've got." The merchant showed him one, big, warm, and brown. It smelled like dust, but it would do. "One credit," the merchant said. Cole handed over the coin. He didn't even blink. Blanket in hand, Cole walked back to the alien woman. She looked up, confused, scared. He crouched down and placed the blanket gently over her and the children. "I'm not here to hurt you," he said softly. "Keep warm. That's all." She didn't speak. She just stared at him. Her lips moved, but no sound came out. He stood up, gave one last look, and walked away into the snow. That night, inside his cold ship, Cole sat by his small heater. He had no food, no money. But he felt something strange, something warm in his chest. The next morning, when he stepped outside, he expected the woman to be gone, but she was still there, wrapped in the blanket, holding her children, and looking at him. Their eyes met. She nodded once, a small nod. Almost nothing, but it meant everything. People in the market whispered, "Why did he waste his credit? She's just a refugee. She's not even human." But Cole didn't care. He didn't explain himself. He didn't need praise. He had done what he felt was right. Days passed. Each morning, Cole saw her. Each night, she stayed in the same spot, huddled under the blanket. Then, one morning, she was gone. He looked around. Nothing. A strange sadness filled his heart. He didn't know her name. He didn't know where she went. But he missed her. He returned to his ship a little slower than usual. When he opened the door, he froze. There, on his doorstep, was a small wooden bowl. Inside it, 2 dry fruits and a folded cloth, a gift. Cole stared at it for a long time. He picked up the cloth and unfolded it. Inside was a word, written in shaky, broken letters. "Thank you." Far from the cold market, in a hidden alley, the alien woman watched from behind a wall. Her children were safe. They had eaten, slept, and lived because of a stranger who gave up his last coin. She didn't know why he helped, but she would never forget it. Not ever. Her name was Talea. Long ago, before the war, she lived in a village of singing trees and glowing skies. Her people, the Elyari, were peaceful. They raised families, planted crystal fruit, and watched the stars with hope. Talea had a mate. His name was Vakar. He was strong, kind, and always smiling. He made her laugh, even when she was tired. He carried her during her first pregnancy, whispering songs of the old gods into her belly. Their children, twins, were born on a rainless night. A rare blessing. She held them and cried, not knowing that the future would rip everything away. The humans didn't start the war. Neither did the Elyari, but when the machines came, drones from a distant empire, everyone ran. The machines didn't speak. They only harvested. Metal and fire rained from the sky. Her village was burned. The trees screamed. Her people were hunted. Vakar tried to fight. He told her to run with the babies. He promised he'd follow, but he never did. Talea wandered for weeks. She crossed rivers with broken bridges. She hid in garbage tunnels. She wrapped her babies in leaves and whispered stories to them through her tears. Her feet bled. Her hands froze. And when she finally found the human colony, she was treated like trash. People didn't hit her, but they looked at her like she was nothing. Some threw crumbs, some threw words. She's not from here, just another beggar. She should go back to her own kind. But where was her kind now? Dead, scattered, lost. So she found a corner near the market, where old crates sat abandoned. She curled up there night after night, hugging her babies, whispering old songs, waiting to die in silence. Then one night, her babies were too cold. They stopped moving. Her arms couldn't stop shaking. She looked up at the sky and begged the gods to let her die instead. That's when he appeared. A human male. He looked like the others, but he didn't act like them. His face was tired. His boots had holes. But his eyes, they saw her. When he returned with the blanket, she didn't believe it was for her. Her people were not used to kindness from outsiders. Not anymore. But he didn't speak much. Just left. The blanket gave her a soft look and walked away. She didn't sleep that night. She cried into the cloth. It smelled like old wool and smoke. It was the warmest thing she had touched in months. She wrapped her babies in it and pressed her face into its folds, not just warm, but safe. The next morning, she woke up expecting it to be a dream. But the blanket was real. Her babies were still breathing, and the man was still there. Day after day, he passed by, never speaking too much. But sometimes he left little things, a box of crackers, a bottle of clean water, a rag to clean her children's faces. One time she tried to say thank you, but her throat couldn't form the words. She hadn't spoken in days, so she just nodded, and he nodded back. It was their quiet language, but one night, men from the market saw the human leaving food behind. They laughed cruelly. Helping aliens now, Cole? Looking for a pet? He didn't answer, just stared at them until they walked away. Talea saw everything. Her hands clenched the blanket tighter. She didn't want him to get in trouble because of her. That's why, the next morning, she left. She took her children and found an old pipe near the scrapyard. It was cold, dirty, but hidden. That evening, she walked all the way back to his ship, quiet as the wind, and left a gift. 2 pieces of dried fruit, a folded cloth, a note she wrote using a broken stick and soot. Thank you. It was the only word she could write in his language. Back in the pipe, she held her children close. She whispered to them. He gave us warmth. He gave us a reason to live. She smiled softly and said something she hadn't said in months. We are not alone. In the days that followed, she watched from afar. She saw him touch the note, saw him read the word, and then she saw him smile. That smile gave her strength, not just to live, but to believe. She didn't know his name, but she had already named him in her heart, the warm one. Cole lived a quiet life. His ship was old, rusted, and cold in the mornings. The heater only worked when he kicked it twice. But he didn't complain. He liked silence. It kept the pain away. His past was full of loss, too many goodbyes, too many graves. So he stopped caring about people until the night he gave away his last credit. Now every morning when he opened the ship door, he looked toward the alley. She wasn't there anymore, not since the day she left him that small thank you gift, but he still looked. He didn't know her name, didn't know where she went, but he remembered her eyes. Eyes that had seen too much pain. Eyes that still had hope. One day, Cole found a fruit beside his doorstep, then a flower, then a tiny drawing, 2 small children and a tall human figure holding a sun. It was drawn with charcoal on old paper. He chuckled softly. "She's watching me," he whispered. He started leaving small things too. A cup of warm broth, a clean towel, even a small toy robot he had built from scrap. It was clunky, missing one arm, but it made funny noises. Every time he left something, it was gone the next day, and in return, something was left for him. A carved stone, a dried flower, a handful of nuts. It became a silent trade between them, 2 people from different worlds, saying thank you without using words. But on one rainy morning he saw her again. She stood at the far end of the market, half hidden behind a wall. Her children held her legs, peeking from behind her long cloak. She didn't run this time. He waved slowly. She didn't wave back, but she didn't leave either. That was enough. He walked away, leaving a small loaf of bread on a crate near her. Spot. She took it. He smiled. The market folk started whispering again. That human's got a soft spot. She's tricking him, all aliens are the same. She's just using him. But Cole didn't care. They didn't know what he knew. They didn't see what he saw. A mother doing everything to protect her kids, even if it meant sleeping in pipes, scavenging for crumbs and hiding in shadows. Later that week, Cole saw the children playing in the distance. They weren't crying anymore. They laughed, quietly. But it was laughter. They ran in circles, chasing the broken robot he had made. Talea sat nearby, her hands wrapped around a warm cup. Her shoulders no longer shook from the cold. Cole watched from a distance. That night he returned home and lit the old heater again. He sat down and stared at the gift she had left that morning, a necklace made from twine and polished buttons. Not valuable, but carefully made. From someone who had nothing, yet still gave. He placed it gently on the shelf beside his bed. The next day, a group of rough market men approached Cole. One pushed him. "You like aliens now, huh?" Cole didn't fight. He simply stood tall and said, "I don't like anyone, but I help when I can." They laughed. One threw mud at him, another spit near his boots, but none of it mattered. That night, as he sat near the heater, someone knocked at his ship's door. A soft knock. He opened it and saw her, Talea, standing there with her children. She held out a small pot of stew. Steam rose from it. She said nothing. He took it with both hands. "Thank you," he said. She nodded. Her lips moved silently, as if practicing the same words. Then she turned to go, but one child tugged at his coat. He looked down. The child held up a drawing, Cole, standing in front of his ship, arms wide with a blanket wrapped around all 3 of them. He swallowed the lump in his throat. "I'll hang it up," he said softly. That night, he ate the stew slowly. It was salty, warm, full of strange spices he had never tasted, and full of something else, care. The next morning, Talea was outside again, sitting by the ship with her children, not hiding, not running, just waiting. Cole opened the door and stepped outside. "You don't have to sit in the cold," he said gently. "It's not much, but I have space inside." She looked at him. Her eyes blinked slowly. Then she stood, and for the first time she stepped inside the human's home. She looked around. Metal walls, cracked floor, an old bed, 2 chairs. But she smiled, because it was safe, because it was warm, and because the man with the kind heart had finally opened the door, not just to his ship, but to her. Cole never thought his small ship would feel full again. But now it was alive with quiet laughter, soft footsteps, and the sound of children drawing on metal walls with chalk. Talea kept the place neat. She cleaned the old kitchen and fixed the heater with a trick from her world. The children folded their tiny blankets each morning and waited patiently for Cole to return from work. Cole didn't talk much, but the silence wasn't heavy anymore. Sometimes, he'd find a cup of tea waiting. Sometimes he'd see Talea brushing her daughter's long white hair with her fingers, humming softly in her native tongue. And sometimes he'd forget he ever felt alone. But peace never lasts long on a planet like theirs. One cold morning, Cole returned from the scrapyard with bruised hands and oil on his face. He stepped into the ship and found Talea holding her daughter tightly. The boy stood in the corner, wide-eyed and shaking. "What happened?" Cole asked, kneeling beside them. Talea looked down, ashamed. "They followed us," she whispered. "The men from the market." Cole's eyes turned cold. "What did they say?" She hesitated, then answered in a voice full of fear. "They said, 'You belong to your kind. That aliens bring disease. They threw stones. One hit my son.'" Cole stood up. "Stay inside. Lock the door. I'll handle this." He went back into town that afternoon. The market was busy. People looked away when he passed. Some stared. Near the junk trader's stall stood the same group of men, 3 of them, tall, dirty, rough. The leader was named Varn. Everyone knew he hated aliens. Cole walked straight up to them. Varn smirked. "Your little pet's hiding today?" Cole said nothing at first. Then, "If you come near them again, I will break your hands." Varn's smirk faded. "You threatening me, human?" Cole stepped closer. "No, I'm warning you." The air grew heavy. A few shopkeepers stopped to watch, but Varn just laughed and walked away, spitting on the ground. "You'll regret this." Cole knew it wasn't over. That night, the wind howled louder than usual. Talea served stew in silence. The children sat close to Cole, their eyes watching every movement. After dinner, he checked the door 3 times, locked every bolt, secured the windows. Still he didn't sleep. At midnight he heard it. Footsteps outside. Then, a bang. The front door shook. Cole jumped up, grabbed a wrench, and moved silently. Talea pressed the children against the wall, covering their mouths. Another bang. Then, loud voices. "You think she's yours, human? She should freeze like the rest of her kind." They threw something. Glass shattered. Smoke crept through a broken vent. Cole kicked the door open. Varn and his men stood there, torches in hand. "You're going to burn her out?" Cole shouted. "She's a parasite," Varn spat. "You'll see. When they drain you dry, you'll regret it." Cole didn't wait. He charged. The fight was messy. Fists. Blood. Shouting. One man hit Cole in the back with a pipe. Another kicked him down. But Cole didn't stop. He grabbed Varn by the coat and slammed him against the wall. "You come near them again," he said through bloody teeth, "and I won't let you walk away." Varn choked, nodded once, then fled with his men. Cole stood in the snow, breathing hard. His knuckles bled. His ribs ached, but the danger was gone. For now. When he stepped back inside, Talea rushed to him. He tried to wave her off. "I'm fine." She placed her hand on his chest and shook her head. Then, with tears in her eyes, she cleaned his wounds one by one. Her touch was gentle, careful, like he was something precious. That night, Cole lay on the floor, wrapped in a blanket. He stared at the ceiling, pain pulsing in his chest. Then he felt something. Talea placed another blanket over him and lay beside him, not touching, just there. For the first time, she spoke a full sentence in English. "You'd protect us. I protect you now." Cole looked at her, and he smiled through the pain. The next day, word spread. Cole had fought for her, not for money, not for favors, just because it was right. Some humans started treating him coldly, but others, quiet ones, left food near his ship. A sign of silent respect, And the alien widow, once invisible, now walked outside with her head a little higher. Because now everyone knew. She had someone who would fight for her. Cole woke up slowly, blinking against the weak morning light that filtered through the ship's window. His chest hurt, his lip was cracked, his ribs throbbed every time he moved, but he was alive, and he was not alone. The blanket had been tucked around him gently, a bowl of warm broth sat beside him. The children were curled up nearby, whispering to each other in soft Iliari words. Talea sat on the floor next to him. She was watching him. When their eyes met, she gave a small nod. "You are hurt," she said quietly. He gave a dry smile. "I've been worse." She didn't smile back. Instead, she stood and left the room for a moment. When she returned, she carried a soft cloth, a small jar of ointment, and a bowl of clean water. She knelt beside him and began to clean his wounds. Her hands were cool, gentle, careful. Cole didn't say anything. He just watched her. This alien, widow who had once curled up in a corner to die, now moved with purpose. She was no longer trembling, no longer hiding. She was healing him. And for a moment he let her. Later that day, when Cole tried to stand, the pain nearly knocked him back down. Talea caught him before he fell. "You need rest," she said firmly. "I can't lie here all day. You can't help us if you're broken." Cole blinked. It was the first time she spoke to him like that, with care but also strength. Then, to his surprise, she added, "Come, I will show you something." She left the ship and gestured for him to follow. Slowly, carefully, Cole stepped out. The children ran ahead. They seemed to know where they were going. Talea led him past the market, past the scrapyard, and down a narrow path between two hills of old wreckage. They reached a metal hatch half buried under the snow. She pulled it open. Inside was a large hidden room, a shelter made from old containers, reinforced with ship panels. There were shelves of dried food, water containers, and a sleeping area, covered in warm furs. Cole stepped in and blinked. "You built this?" She nodded. "I found it. I fixed it." "Why?" "In case we had to run again." Cole looked at her. "Is this where you stayed when you left the ship?" "Yes. But now, this is not just for me." She paused, then added in a soft voice, "It is for you too." He turned to her slowly. Something deep inside his chest moved. Not pain, not fear, something warmer. They stayed in the shelter for the next few days. Cole rested. Talea brought him food and sat beside him, humming old songs from her world. The children played nearby, building tiny homes from scrap and old wires. They called Cole Maha, a word from their language that meant strong one or keeper. He didn't correct them. One night the wind howled outside, but inside the shelter it was quiet. Cole sat near the heater, rubbing his sore shoulder. Talea sat beside him. "You fight for us," she said softly. "I couldn't let them hurt you," she nodded. "But you were hurt. I'd do it again." She looked down. Her fingers twisted together nervously. Then she said, "You gave me a blanket when no one gave me anything. You needed it. I needed someone. You were that someone." He turned his head to look at her. She added, barely above a whisper, "I want to be that for you." Cole didn't speak for a moment. Then, very slowly, he reached out and placed his hand over hers. "I think you already are." The next morning, Talea cooked something new, a stew from her homeland made with dried mushrooms and powdered roots. It smelled strange, but Cole liked it. "You know," he said, "this is starting to feel like a home." She smiled. "It is." The children giggled as they ate. One placed a drawing on the wall, a picture of the four of them standing together under a star. It was clumsy, uneven, but it was perfect. Later, while Cole rested, Talea sat outside the shelter, staring at the sky. She thought of Vekar, her old mate. She whispered a prayer to the stars. "Thank you for the life we had, and thank you for sending me this man, who gave his last coin not for gain, but for goodness." She wiped a tear from her cheek and smiled. Inside, the man she prayed for was snoring loudly. She laughed softly. Her children had found safety. She had found something more. A future, a partner, a warm place to return to. And all because one man had given his last credit. The stars above the frozen planet were brighter than usual. Talea sat outside the hidden shelter, staring up into the sky. The cold wind brushed her cheeks, but she didn't feel it. Her hands were warm, folded over a small cloth bundle. Inside was the very same blanket Cole had once given her. It was old now, worn thin, but it still smelled like safety. Behind her, the children slept, their tiny bodies curled beneath layers of furs. The shelter was quiet. The heater hummed softly, and Cole was inside, asleep. She looked over her shoulder. He had fallen asleep, sitting against the wall, arms crossed, head tilted back. He looked tired, but peaceful. Her heart beat a little faster. That day, something had changed between them. They had worked together to rebuild a water purifier. It was old tech, rusted and leaky. Cole showed her how to seal the pipes with heat tape, and Talea taught him how Eliari herbs could clean the inside of the tank. They laughed when the pipe burst in his face. He laughed harder when she slipped and landed in a puddle. That evening, he made tea. She made stew, and they ate together, like a real family. She didn't speak much. She didn't have to. But when he asked if she missed her home, she said quietly, "I miss who I was, before the war." He had nodded and replied, "You're still her. I see her every day." Her chest had ached with something strange, something soft and frightening. So now, hours later, under the stars, she held the old blanket in her hands and wondered, could she truly let herself care for a man who wasn't her kind? Could she give her heart again? The ship door opened gently behind her. Cole stepped out, pulling his coat around his shoulders. "You okay?" he asked. She nodded. He walked up beside her, slow and careful, then sat down in the snow beside her, groaning a little from the bruises still healing on his ribs. They sat in silence, side by side, looking up at the sky. "The stars look different tonight," he said. "They're the same," she replied softly. "But when you feel safe, they shine more." He smiled at that. "I used to watch them every night," he added. "Thought I was alone out here, just another forgotten man." "You are not alone," she said quickly. He turned his head toward her. Their eyes met. Her hands tightened on the blanket. Then slowly she unfolded it and placed it over both of them. Cole looked down. "This is the one I gave you." "Yes," she whispered. "And now I give it back." He touched the edge gently. "You kept it all this time?" She nodded. "It saved me." He swallowed. "I'm glad." For a moment there was only silence. Then she said the words she had been afraid to say for weeks. "I want to stay beside you, always." Cole froze. He wasn't a man of big words or grand dreams. He had lost people before. He had buried love under pain. But looking at her now, this woman who had come from nothing, who had chosen to live again, he felt something shift deep inside him. He reached out and touched her hand. "You already are," he said softly. Her fingers curled into his. She leaned her head against his shoulder, and for a long time they sat like that. Two souls wrapped in one old blanket, sharing warmth under the stars. Inside the shelter, the heater flickered. The children stirred, then settled again. The moon rose higher, and outside on that quiet hill, a human and an alien widow forgot the pain of yesterday and began to dream of tomorrow. Later that night, as Cole tucked the children in, Talea rolled out a second bedroll beside his. When he looked at her in surprise, she met his gaze and said, "You gave us safety. Let me give you comfort." He didn't argue. He simply lay beside her, the same blanket covering them both. It wasn't about heat anymore. It was about presence. A quiet promise A bond not spoken, but deeply understood. As the night deepened, Cole whispered, "You're not alone either, Talea." She smiled, eyes half closed. "I know." Then, finally, she allowed herself to sleep. And for the first time in many years, she dreamed without fear. The snow had melted. Not all of it, but enough for grass to peek through the white. The sky was still cold, but the sun now stayed longer. Spring was coming, even to this forgotten corner of the galaxy, and with it came change. Cole stepped outside the shelter and stretched his arms. The bruises on his ribs had faded. His coat had new stitches, thanks to Talea. His ship was cleaner, too. The floor didn't creak as much, and the broken light above the door had been replaced with a glowing Eliari lantern. Inside, Talea was humming. She stood near the small stove, stirring a pot of thick soup. Her daughter was braiding her hair. Her son was fixing a dented pan with a small tool Cole had given him. It was quiet, peaceful, and it felt real, like a life that belonged to them, not borrowed, not temporary. Home. Cole walked to the edge of the hill, where the old ship rested half buried in frost. It still wasn't flight ready, but it no longer looked like a ghost's house. He turned when he heard soft steps behind him. Talea joined, him holding 2 cups of tea. She handed him one and stood silently at his side. "I've been thinking," Cole said after a moment, "about leaving." Her face shifted. "Not alone," he added quickly. "With you, with the children." Her eyes softened. "There's a small human colony, South Ridge. They accept outsiders now. Maybe we could build something there, start fresh." Talea looked down at her cup. The steam curled gently between them. "I thought about leaving too," she said. "Many times, but not anymore." "Why?" She turned to him. "Because I've already found what I was running to." That night the shelter was filled with light and laughter. Talea cooked a dish from her childhood, soft root cakes and spiced syrup. Cole made his favorite, flatbread with smoked salt. The children drew stars on the wall, adding faces this time. 4 smiling figures. 1 tall human, 1 tall Eliari woman, 2 small children, and a heart between them. Talea saw the drawing and said, "They drew family." Cole looked at it, then at her. "That's what we are now, right?" She nodded. "Yes." Later, as they lay beside each other on the floor bed, she whispered, "You gave your last credit to save strangers." "I didn't plan to." Cole chuckled. She smiled. "But you did." Then her voice became softer, more serious. "I was a returned product." Cole blinked. "What?" "In the black markets, I was taken and sold, used, then thrown away. No one wanted me anymore, not even my own people." Cole felt a sharp ache in his chest. She continued, "When I sat in that snow, I believed I was less than nothing. But you saw me. You gave without asking." He touched her hand. "You were never nothing." She met his eyes. "And now I know that. Because of you." The next morning, something incredible happened. The children ran outside and shouted, "Visitors!" Cole stepped out cautiously. A hover cart approached carrying supplies. At the front was a familiar face, Mila, a young human from the market. "We brought food and seeds," she said. "We heard what you did. We changed our minds." Behind her stood 3 others, humans and aliens alike. They looked nervous, unsure. Cole didn't speak. He looked at Talea. She stepped forward, smiled, and bowed slightly. "You are welcome here," she said softly. And with that, something changed. The hill was no longer just a place to survive. It had become a place to grow. Weeks passed. The shelter became a home. The old ship turned into a classroom where Cole taught the children old Earth tech. Talea grew plants in recycled tubs. She painted the walls with Eliari symbols, symbols of healing, of family, of new beginnings. Sometimes at night, they sat together and watched the stars, not as strangers, not as broken souls, but as one. One evening, after putting the children to sleep, Cole looked at her across the firelight. "Do you miss your old life?" he asked. Talea shook her head slowly. "No." "Why not?" She reached out and brushed a hand across his cheek. "Because my real life started with a blanket." He took her hand and kissed it gently. "And mine," he whispered, "started with a thank you." From a single act of kindness, a family was born. From the coldest night came the warmest bond, and in a world that had forgotten them both, they found each other. They called it home.